And thank you for this wonderful turnout.
It sounds funny.
It sounds funny, like distorted, or
Yeah.
am I holding it too?
That's better.
That's better? All right. All right, my name is Carolyn White, and I'm the President and Voter Service Chair of the League of Women Voters of Park Rapids area. And we are absolutely glad that everybody turned out on this drizzly old night and stuff, so thank you very much. Some housekeeping details. Please make sure to turn off phones or mute them. I'll wait for all of that to happen. We want to make sure that we're being respectful and aware that the enterprise is doing a live streaming of this onto Facebook, and we're making a video that we put up on our YouTube channel. So if you have conversations or anything that has some noise to it, please go out in the hallway, either out that door or there, so that you don't get on videotape forever. Bathrooms and drinking fountains are out this south door here, and you walk up the hallway, and those bathrooms are right at the end of the hallway. And an important reminder, the League of Women Voters Park Rapids has been involved in Park Rapids community off and on since 1935. So we're not new to this endeavor. We always have been deeply involved in helping existing and new voters understand the mechanics and voting, as well as all of the issues impacting citizens. We believe in serving voters' needs in a nonpartisan manner by encouraging participation in the voting process and by educating voters on the candidates and the issues. We do not support candidates or a particular political party. So I know that's hard to understand because we do advocate for some issues, but during the campaign and election season, there's nobody, we don't endorse anyone. We don't even think about that. All right. And tonight, you'll notice one of our speakers either had some sort of trouble or something and was unable to be here. I don't know why. So we will continue on. We'll just have to fill in for part of that, and we'll do the best we can. When we started this program, we probably started talking about a year ago of having some sort of conversation about how to have a civil conversation, how to talk to each other. We kicked around ideas and titles and stuff. Nearly everyone, both nationally as well as here in our local community, have expressed anxiety about the partisanship shown on many of these issues, and especially in the upcoming elections. Many people we have talked to felt the need to come together to talk about citizenship in an anxious world. As we put this program together, our members have had the opportunity to talk with many individuals from various community groups. We, as a League of Women Voters, feel this program can address some of these concerns. During the conversations, members noticed that many people used the same or similar adjectives to describe how they felt about the current environment. Words like anxious, nervous, disrespectful, lack of civility, lack of trust, polarization, partisanship. This list shows how stressed and anxious we are. Many of us are very cautious when we mention political issues. And at the same time, when we announced the program, people said how much we need to have this conversation. People seem to want a community where we can discuss differences of opinion in a respectful manner, listen to each other, and strive to reach some common ground. A lot of this background noise can be disturbing and leads to some more anxiety. Whether it's our city, county, state, or nation, Governments or civic organizations are set up to help solve problems that affect us all. But if we as citizens avoid discussing the issues of our day, we can't find the solutions that work for our community. When I read the national news or even Minnesota news, I see many communities with very contentious board meetings. There's yelling, shouting, but I don't see that same intensity here in Park Rapids. I've seen some letters to the editor, I've seen some signs around town, I've heard some hurtful words exchanged. But I've also seen several ways that we work together for positive results in this community. For example, we have a very high voter turnout in this county. I think it's upward 85–90%. And this shows we must trust our election and our voters, the voting process. There's also a level of respect for each other among our organizations, our boards, and our councils. And we have a local newspaper that reports on our election process, our local governments, and our community organizations. And I'm sure several of you that have been reading newspapers have seen many local newspapers are closing, so we thank the enterprise for sticking with us. We also work together on needed local projects. So Park Rapids has positives. Tonight we've invited community members to share their thoughts on what we can do to improve our citizens' participation during this anxious time and to serve our community better as the rhetoric heats up in these coming months. I want to personally thank our panel for helping me put together this program and for all the league volunteers that helped. This was a difficult conversation to put together. It took a lot of talking and to get our focus because it's a wide-ranging problem. So our first, the panelists are Arceli Gutierrez, Anna Ekman, Steve Norby, Josh Hahn, and Kent Herring were talking with us tonight. Jessica Bow is a counselor at GroupWorks Wellness and was unable to be here. And I'm just going to give a little bit of background talk that she was going to talk to us about ways that we can respectfully listen to each other and talk to each other and remind us that the level of stress, it just doesn't make your blood pressure go up. It affects everything. How we sleep, how we interact with people. This stress is not good for us. So finding a way to respectfully and, let's see, talking off the top of your head is always hard. But to try and actually listen to what other people are saying, don't take it personally, stick to the issues and avoid all the name calling or any other things. Basically, know when your conversation is going someplace and when it's time to leave it. We have some power here. And we've got some handouts on the table if you haven't gotten those yet. I know that these were being passed out at the door on the Braver Angels, so if you don't have one of those, Lawrence can give that to you. And we've got some other resources, including some of the counseling stuff. And if your email's on the sign-up list, if I get anything that Jessica wrote out for tonight, and I will email it to you. So I'm going to start tonight with Arceli. I didn't say that right, did I? Arceli. And turn it over to her, and each panelist will introduce themselves a bit more.
Can everyone hear me? No.
Okay.
There we go. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
little closer to that mic. There.
Okay. My name is Arsley Gutierrez. I am a junior at the Park Rapids High School.
I'm Anna Ekman. I'm a senior at the Park Rapids High School.
I don't know, I I'm ringing.
Yeah, you turned it.
Okay, Steve Norby, I'm a pastor at Calvary Lutheran. The one thing I want just to say right from the get-go, I'm so impressed that you both are here and taking time to do this, especially to, somebody doesn't have white hair like me, at any rate. And I think these girls deserve a hand, I really do.
I'm Joshua Hahn. There we go. I'm Joshua Hahn, pastor of First Baptist Church. I've been there just about the same time that Steve's been at Calvary.
And I'm Ken Herring, an ambassador for the Braver Angels organization.
Okay. So as me and Anna mentioned, I am a junior, which means I'm in 11th grade.
And I'm a senior, so about to graduate.
Yes.
Good. So we've just been called in to talk about some of the questions that you guys have for the youth, since you don't maybe not interact with our generation too much, and hopefully we can clear up some questions. So the first one is, do you worry about the effects of hostile polarization on our state and nation? And honestly, I do. Like, you see in the news, you see the protests, you see the riots, you see people getting hurt because of this stuff. And I'm honestly a little nervous because I'm going off to college this year during an election year, and it's going to be my first time away from my little family bubble, and I'm going to have to deal with all that. So yeah, I am nervous about this kind of stuff.
As a junior, our grade, or even like people around my age group, we haven't really thought about it as much as I would like to know more about it. Even just being here tonight, I'm definitely learning a lot more things, and I'm excited to be prepared so that next year as a senior, I will know what to do once that comes around. The next question is, can you see or feel this polarization here in Hubbard County? So, like our wonderful speaker said, I do think that we have such a great community here in Park Rapids. I'm actually not originally from Park Rapids. I actually was born and raised in Guatemala, so a little bit of a different area. But I definitely love the community that we have, and just the overall respect and the balance of authority, and then just being able to hear what everyone says. And I think even in our school, we definitely take that as a priority. Both me and Anna are on student council, so we see and hear a lot of the things that people bring back to our student government, and we definitely...
That's really good. Yeah. I mean, as far as high school goes, there really isn't a lot of political tension in the high school, because like stuff like that just doesn't really get brought up. I mean, maybe in a history classroom, but otherwise kids aren't gonna go out and purposely try and make someone angry about their political views, which I think is really positive, because in some places that does happen, and it just doesn't happen in Park Rapids, which is a really good thing.
I think a lot of people, like especially in our age group, just are very influenced in whether what their parents think or what their friends think or what social media shows about politics. So I think that social media and even just the people you are around with definitely impact the way you see things.
The next one is, has political rancor entered your own world of family, friends, or coworkers? For me personally, with my family a little bit, there has been some political tension just because of opposing views at Christmas time, and maybe after a little bit gets a little rowdy. But I mean, at the end of the day, we're family, and it's something you just have to get over it. Even though you may think something differently, that's not a place to do it at the dinner table with your family around. It's not the place to fight about it. And I think my family handles that pretty well.
My family, like I said, we aren't originally from here, so I truly did not have that experience of knowing when to vote, what it means to vote, and the impact it has on the community. So with just being here tonight, I'm slowly learning and hoping that I will learn and I will begin to understand the impact and the importance of voting and overall just having that different perspective. So the next question is, do students avoid conversations about politics to avoid being attacked?
I mean, again, like I said before, political conversations really don't enter into high school and the history classroom sometimes, but I have definitely heard kids that have voiced their opinions in class, and that's good to see. And I've never seen anyone get verbally attacked or physically attacked even for sharing those opinions. People are usually pretty respectful of what other people think, and that's a really good thing to see.
I feel like our school has such a good way of staying positive, and especially with this year, I think we've definitely improved our school spirit and things like that. But overall, with politics, like Anna said, we don't typically bring it up. But I definitely still think that people just kind of get their influences from the people that they are surrounded with and what they see on social media.
I think social media is a big one. A lot of kids do get like what they think off of social media, and this can be a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, some stuff you see on social media is fake, and sometimes it's hard to weed through that information, but I think that's a new challenge that we have coming up, especially now with social media becoming so popular.
So the next question is, what do we think that we could do about it? So personally, I feel like if people were to get more involved at such a younger age and to understand the knowledge behind it, the impact of it, and overall just be aware of their surroundings. And I think that Park Rapids does a good deal with just keeping everyone's perspective evenly and just understanding everyone's views.
Yeah, what we can do, I know a lot of kids in my grade, because since we do get to vote in this next election, have become more like active and aware about their views and what they want to do in the future, which I think is a good thing, becoming more active, because before it was really like, it never wasn't even really a thought, because you're in high school and you do what your teachers say, you do what your parents say, for that. But now I feel like it's a good thing that we're becoming more aware, more active.
Yeah, as a junior, I definitely think that our grade has not really put as much thought into it, but I definitely think that this upcoming fall, when we do become seniors, that it will start to be something that everyone will start thinking about and hopefully just try and access knowledge to fully understand.
All right, and our last question is, what should us older folks, in quotations, know from the youth, and what should government officials know? I think for me personally is that you have to understand that we're still learning and that we have a lot of questions. Like for me personally, I'm moving to South Dakota, so I don't know where to vote. Do I mail in my vote? All that stuff. But we do really want to become involved. We want to be able to be active in government, but we are still learning, and there might be a few bumps along the way, but just maybe helping us out a little and pointing us in like the correct direction and helping us out so that we can be that active voice that we want to be.
Wow, you said it all. Yeah. But like Anna said, I definitely think that just showing those different perspectives and not trying to single out or call out just one specific name, but giving the youth different perspectives so that they can see that that's their values and their impacts that they want, so that they can choose for themselves, what do I think is the best decision? What do I think will impact my community? And just overall, just access more knowledge and to just be more aware and thoughtfulness.
Thank you. talk to me after the program. I've got the perfect website for you. Show you whatever you do, but you can vote here in Park Rapids. Okay, go ahead, Steve.
I guess okay, thank you. How many of you guys participated in the primary? I kind of figured it'd be a pretty high percent here. And how many of you trusted what happened? And the only thing I'm really trying to get at is I really believe I was there, and I thought the respect, and everyone was taking things seriously. There was no joking around. It was, you know, you followed the procedures, and you know, and and got your little sticker and things like that. But I also thought too that all the people that made that happen, I said, you're our heroes. You're our heroes. And to make that trustworthy. Now, probably the thing sometimes is that when you work real hard on something like that, and then if it gets attacked, it gets awfully hard not to get really angry and upset because you've invested. I'll speak for myself. If I wasn't a poll worker, but if all of a sudden things got attacked and I was there, and my point was that, are you kidding me? You're going to attack what happened here? And the thing would be is probably yes. And that's probably going to happen. And so one of the things I always thought was this, that when it says not to take it personally, well, I think of the serenity prayer, and that is to accept the things I cannot change, and that's other people's point of views. But the courage to change the things I can. And that's me. And how I react to that. And not to give up my serenity to somebody else that, you know, but to hold true to my values wherever they take me. And so the serenity prayer is something that I really think has helped a lot for me. Our church, I think, sounds an awful lot like the high school. And we purposely stay neutral in our church. And part of that is because we're tax exempt. And my only thing is if we decide as a congregation to get political and partisan, then we should pay taxes, period. And but if we have the privilege of not paying taxes, then we also have the privilege of curbing our speech. Now, encouraging people to vote, not a question. Encouraging people to, so it's not like we won't address anything. But as soon as it becomes political, all I could say is that, in my opinion, that status, again, who would yank it, I don't know. But our core value is very high, that's a privilege. And so we're going to take that seriously and not flush it for a particular view on something, even though we might have strong feelings about it. A few years ago, I'll just kind of say one thing and I'll kind of move on, because I want to hear your questions. And that was when the Minnesota, if you remember when the Minnesota Constitution had the vote with regard to same-gender marriage, that was about, gosh, almost 10 years ago now. And about 3 weeks before the vote, I got in the pulpit, and this is what I said. I said, this is what I want you to do on the second Tuesday in November. Heads popped up. What? This is what I want you to do. And I said 3 words. Vote your conscience. That's it. And that's about as political as I want to get. And then on the other thing, I looked up anxious in the dictionary. I found it very interesting that it comes from the Latin word that means, and I thought this was really interesting, to strangle. It's the Latin root to strangle. And then characterized by extreme uneasiness of mind or a brooding fear about some contingency. Well, that's the second Tuesday in November. That's the contingency. And worried. And we have every right to have our worries, and we have every right to have our concerns. I think if you don't care, you don't worry. But on the other hand, the other thing I want to just say is, I think of John Kennedy's book, Profiles of Courage. And in the last election, Profiles of Courage stepped up. And even after January 6th, Profiles of Courage stepped up. And I have total confidence that that's going to happen again. And at least it's been the pattern in history, and I find great comfort in that. The other thing that I like too, somebody once said, courage is not the absence of fear, it's the absence of self. And I thought about that. So you think of the soldier who throws himself on a grenade. He's not thinking of himself. He's thinking entirely of others. Not the absence of fear, but the absence of self. And if I can do that, then I have a strength. If I'm thinking about the good of my town, then I'm not going to be quiet. If I'm thinking about my family, I'm going to step up. If it's all about me, then I'm paralyzed. But when it's about the neighbor. So I've said enough. I'm not trying to preach. I apologize if you take it that way. But I do want, as a good citizen, I have great confidence in this town, and I have great confidence in our future. I also know there's going to be some crap hold. It's going to happen. So the biggest thing is for, and I'll speak for myself, for a person who wants to be mature, how am I going to handle that? And then I'm not going to worry about the ones that are pulling the stuff. I got to take responsibility for me. Thank you.
So now I have to follow that. That's great, thanks. Yeah. I was thinking about the theme of civility, and I looked that up as well. And the idea of civility literally just means that you act as a citizen, or you act like the normal way that people in society expect you to act. Well, isn't it true that society sort of, depending on what society you're in, that changes? Like I was in Spain recently, and it's very rude if you don't kiss people on the cheek. Well, it's sort of rude if you do that here. So it depends on what society you're in to how you act civil. Well, of course, so then you think about we're in this world together, and there are things that every single person in the world, we all agree on. For instance, that kindness is better than cruelty. Then you come to the United States, and you find out that we have different values than other countries as well. We really value independence and freedom and being able to do whatever you want. And that's not necessarily a value everywhere. But that's kind of what binds us together. Now here in the Midwest, I've grown up not in Minnesota, but in the Midwest my whole life. We have a shared belief in hard work and being kind to your neighbors, and that family's important. And again, that's not the case necessarily every place in the United States. So when we say act civil, you're saying act like the people who are around you. And that circle gets smaller and smaller until you get to Park Rapids. And in Park Rapids, we have our own value system that we all share, even within those other spheres, right? So now you think about all the different worlds that you occupy, from really, really big to really, really small. And because of the internet and social media, you have access to all those people. it's very easy to be unkind with someone you disagree with who lives in Bangladesh or some far-off place like Indiana. Because you're never going to see that person. You're never going to see them, and the consequences are probably very small. Unless they find out your address and call the SWAT team on you. But now you have to be kind to the people in your town because you might see them again. You might cut somebody off, and then you pull into Holiday and they pull in right behind you. Oh no, Or I'm very rude to someone that I disagree with politically, and then we end up at Helen's Kitchen together or at Subway together. And now I've got to face that. So there's an extra incentive to be kind in a small town when you know you're going to see these people and you have to live with them and you know their family, and the consequences are just greater. Life in a small town, reputation means something, whereas on the global stage it really doesn't as much. So then we just have to be really careful that we don't fall into certain traps or certain fallacies, certain lies that are being told that we often agree with without knowing it. For instance, that we are more different than we are the same. There's a real push to think about our differences more than our similarities. What makes me different from Steve? What makes First Baptist Church different from Calvary? Well, if I thought really hard, I could probably come up with those things. Probably. But I'll tell you this, whenever I do a funeral, and I've done some funerals with Steve, but when I do a funeral, last time I did one, I asked the funeral director, who's the best pastor? And I wasn't fishing for a compliment. And it's a good thing because I didn't get it. But who's the best pastor at funerals, the one that just shows care? And he said, Steve Norby. Absolutely. And I said, I should probably shadow Steve at some point and find out how to care like a pastor.
How much money do I got?
My point is, I could find out all the ways that Steve and I are so different and I'm better than he is. Or I can say, we're really similar in more ways than we are different. And it's okay that we disagree on something, because if we were both the same and if both our churches the same, well, we might as well merge, right? I suspect that's probably not the case, but social media, and I think Arsley and Anna, you can probably agree with this, that social media kind of feeds on the negative, right? You don't generally come to school and say, did you see that cute cat meme? It's usually, did you hear what someone said on someone else's page, or did you see that text that somebody sent, or honestly, that's like the extent of what I know about social media. But isn't it true? Is it true that drama kind of like gets people talking? And why is it that we take the bait every single time that there's something negative, or we're like, ooh, I'm going to glom onto that? And that's a trap that we fall into, and that's uncivil. Another thing is that the fallacy that we fall into is that things that upset us are more important than we think. I think every one of us has at one point in our life been upset with something that's happened in Washington, D.C. I don't need you to ask for a raise of hands, it's just true, right? But Washington, D.C. is a long ways away. And it is true that some of the things that happen there affect us, but not as many as we think. We rarely go to a county commissioner meeting, and those meetings really affect the way that we live our lives, and yet we can't be bothered to go to those, and yet we're just transfixed on what's going on in Washington. I'm not saying it's not important, I'm just saying maybe it's not as important as we think it is. The third fallacy is a person who disagrees with me is my enemy. And that's another thing I really think that social media has, I would say, helped with, but it's really hurt. That the people that I disagree with are people that are against me. And so I need to be against them. Rather than, we disagree on so many of these things. How many of these things are really worth disintegrating my friendships, my family, my Christmas time, How many of these things are worth blowing up Christmas for? Not as many as we like to think, because those people aren't our enemies. And as soon as we start thinking of them as our enemies, we really get into a lot of trouble. The last thing I'll say is the fallacy we jump into is that fighting is the only chance I have to make things right. And that's not true either. The dialogue, discussion, and it's true that you maybe won't be able to change anyone's mind, but I've really found that if I can understand at least where the other person's coming from, then I can go back to those core principles. Maybe we can't agree on these things, but there's a whole lot of things we can agree on. So I won't preach, but I'll say that Jesus told a parable once about a man who was on a journey, and he stupidly went all by himself and got beat up and robbed and left for dead. And Jesus says that a priest came by, but didn't help him. And a Levite came by and didn't help him. And when all the other rabbis tell the story, it's a Pharisee who comes and helps the man. That's the way they tell the story. But Jesus said it was a Samaritan. A Samaritan was somebody who the Jews hated. How they would, if they found each other, they would kill each other. And that Samaritan, instead of finishing off this Jewish man, put him on his beast, took him to an inn, and paid for his care. And Jesus told that story right on the heels of saying, love your neighbor as yourself. And somebody came along and said, who's my neighbor? And so Jesus told that story. So who's your neighbor? Well, it is the person on the other side of the keyboard in South Dakota or Florida. It is the person who's you got a text from or you got an email from. It is the person in Washington. It's also the people that you live with. And so we're just called to love everybody. Whether we agree with them, the Jews and Samaritans didn't figure things out, but it was a good story in this one moment. I can't change everybody, but I can, like you said, I can change the way I act towards other people. So that's what we're called to, civility and love.
Good evening, folks.
Good evening.
It's really good to be here with you. Before I take a dive into this, I have a confession to make. I have a quirk. Now, my wife might have a few words to say about that, like, what? Just one? Well, she might be right, but I'm only going to confess to one. I have this guy inside of me that drops by uninvited, starts talking whether I want to listen or not. It can really be annoying, especially when he asks a question, because he won't stop asking that question until I can give him an answer that he will accept. Lately, the question that he's been asking is, can our nation survive? Now, I know what I want the answer to be, but I do not know what the answer will be. I'd like to examine that question with you, and to do that, I need to tell you a wee bit of my story. When I was in the Marine Corps, I served with men and women that were different than me. We came from all across America. We looked different, we talked different, we had different opinions and different ideas. But the Marine Corps cannot defend America with Marines who placed a greater emphasis on our differences than on what we had in common. We were trained to remember what it was that bound us together. Our lives depended upon each other, and that became an important part of my reality. Slowly, I've come to realize just how important my reality is in forming my opinions. Now, I like to believe that when I form an opinion, I first examine an issue objectively. But truthfully, there's an awful lot more going on inside of me. My opinion is heavily influenced by how I perceive the issue. And what are my perceptions? Well, whatever they are rooted in all the good and the not so good encounters and experiences that have formed my reality. Since we each have our own life experiences, it makes sense to me that my reality is going to be different than yours. Now, I think that Margaret Mead, the anthropologist, hit the nail right on the head when she declared, always remember, you are absolutely unique, just like everybody else. Our realities play a significant role in our ability to talk to each other about the issues that confront us in our communities and in our nation. If I want to have a meaningful and productive conversation with you, I have to start by respecting you as a fellow human being and acknowledge that I don't know what your reality is. When I share parts of my story with you and listen intently and with genuine curiosity to your story, inevitably, commonalities will emerge that we can both affirm. Our realities touch and they overlap. I have found from the people that I have listened to, be they Republican or Democrat, all love America, care about what happens to their families, treasure their freedom, and revere the Constitution of our United States. What we have in common is greater than what divides us. Well, so now I was at a point where I recognized what I needed to do. But I also recognized that I didn't have the skills or the courage to enter this arena alone. Turns out I didn't have to. I came across a news article that introduced me to the organization that I am here to represent, Braver Angels. Now, one of President Lincoln's lesser-known quotes is, "I don't like that man. I must get to know him." That quote embodies the spirit of Braver Angels. Our mission is to bridge the partisan divide. We attempt to do this by providing the skills and the opportunities and the safe spaces for people to come together and listen to each other, to better understand our differences, to identify common ground, and to seek solutions to the issues that face us. We are not a partisan organization, and we will not attempt to change anybody's opinion on an issue. At every level of the Braver Angels organization, from our local alliances to our national office, leadership is shared between at least one conservative and one liberal volunteer. By bringing reds and blues together to safely discuss the issues that confront us at every level of government, Braver Angels is giving birth to a movement to restore civil discourse in America. For me, the answer to the question that guy keeps asking is yes. We can survive as a nation. Our present political divide is wide, but it doesn't need to stay that way. We may be polarized, but we are not paralyzed. Finding common ground? Definitely not easy, but it is essential for holding America together. Participating in Braver Angels provides us with the tools and the opportunities to depolarize, and to uphold the vision of our founding fathers, so eloquently expressed in the preamble to our Constitution, to form a more perfect union. Now, politicians are quite adept at sensing what direction the wind is blowing. They will be influenced by the citizens that they were elected to represent. By our example of respect and civil discourse, it is indeed possible for us to help them reach for and stand on higher ground. I invite you to visit us at braverangels.org. See for yourself what people like you and me can do to bridge the partisan divide. I have laid out some materials on the table back there that describe our workshops and our debate formats in greater detail. But our Depolarizing Within workshop is a great place to start. You can use the QR code on this sheet that I have given you to subscribe to our newsletter and find out what we are doing and where these events take place. Now, I'll be around for a while, so please take advantage of the opportunity to ask any questions that you might have. And if you have something that crosses your mind after this is over, you can send me an email. My email address is on the card that you have there. And also, if you would like to have a continuing conversation about the possibility of a Braver Angels presence in Park Rapids, please give me your name and contact information on this clipboard. I'll have that on the table back there also. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to be with you this evening. To be honest with you, sometimes this mission overwhelms me. And when I get discouraged, I revisit and ponder the words of this poem, While There Is Still Time. I leave these words with you, and I hope to see you at a Braver Angels event someday.
A poet of sorrow wrote 3 simple lines, a plea that tomorrow may come to weigh heavy on all of our minds. A poet is no one, as most poets find, but sister and brother, take care with each other, for we should be kind while there is still time. There's a rain and there's thunder before there is flood. The signs and the wonders that warn of the spilling of blood. And the mountains will crumble, they're just rock and mud. So sister and brother, take care with each other, for we should be kind while there is still time. They'll ask where you were, they'll ask when you knew. They'll ask what you did, so ask yourself, what can I do? You poets of sorrow, don't drown in your tears. The songs of tomorrow must rise from the ashes of fear. Will you stand and bear witness, reminding mankind that we're all connected, our lives intertwined, and we must do sister and brother, take care with each other, for we shall be kind while there is still time. While there is still time. While there is still time.
Thank you, Kent. I think that's the first time we've ever had that much music. All right. What?
You're down.
Down. I'm too loud. Usually it's the other way around. Are there some questions for any of our speakers here? This might help.
Thanks. I was hoping you would ask. Actually, I did have a question for our first two speakers in particular. I was really enjoying, I was involved with what you were saying, and I was liking to hear that. I too appreciate the fact that you came to this. This is really important. And I think after I was through listening to you, I was wondering, what could, from your point of view, and your friends, if you can speak that far, what can community, adults, and organizations and others do to help mentor young people like yourselves in a journey towards becoming an involved citizen? We often try. We reach out and we're going, how do we get the kids to come? How do we get them to go? They're going, how do I not get there? How can we, what can we do in many different venues that would, be useful to you in mentoring toward becoming these citizens? Because citizenship is really a big deal, and it's really important, and it's important to have people that think different things. If it's all the same stuff, like, why go? Anyway, I would like to hear from you what you think would be of interest, and what would you go to?
I think a lot of that responsibility falls on our educators in the high school and also our parents and grandparents, because, there's not a lot of outreach between younger people and older members of the community. It's just, there's not many events where that happens. And honestly, for high school students, I don't know that a lot of high school students that would be willing to do that, just because high school students kind of do their own thing. But I really think building that education around having involved voters and informed voters, which can be tricky in the public education system because there's certain rules that you have to follow. But I think that a lot of that can come from the parents and grandparents and educators.
Yeah, like Anna said, I think that was a great idea. Like, just even having that discussed more at school, or even just having an event for younger people to come and just understand and fully engage with other people that have that similar questions as they do.
So it would be helpful to have that event during the school day, because you guys are exceedingly busy the rest of the days.
Yeah, I think for kids that are interested, if we had an event at the high school to be like, hey, if you have questions about voting, because I know a lot of kids are confused, especially my age, about how do I register, how do I, all this stuff. So an event like that would, I think, really be helpful.
There's going to be one. Unfortunately for you, Anna, it's September 19th, which is National Voter Registration Day, and there is a huge coalition of organizations, including the Secretary of State's office, the three political parties, and the League of Women Voters, to register for some kind of an event to happen on September 19th in every high school in the nation. But we've only got 500 or so in Minnesota.
But that's great
to
to
know,
know, because none of us would have known.
And I just got the announcement today at noon, so this is a new thing. So You know,
It's good to
and-
look forward to.
Yeah, and I think maybe we have some people that we know can help us. Because we can set the date and time, but you guys are the ones that will help us say, how do we focus and are we doing this right? So I'm looking forward to doing more work with you guys. Another question?
First of all, thank you, Carolyn, and to the league for sponsoring the event and all the speakers. I'm really impressed by what you've given to this. My best friend in high school and I used to play a game, and we had no idea how important it was going to be to us later. When we were going to go into a class, especially social studies or something like that, we would make a pact with each other that whatever the issue or topic we were going to come up, we were going to take opposite sides. And it was just debate. And I had no idea that it was a skill that I would be able to use later in life. So I'm wondering, again, this is for the two of you, and I'm struggling. You guys can learn from these people. Does your school or the groups that you're in have, young people use the word create a space, a time and a place and where you can actually have an open conversation about issues and discover differences and have that kind of conversation? Or are you so busy with classes and assignments and extracurricular activity that there's no time to actually feel comfortable to be yourself and express ideas that may be different?
I know in our senior economics class, we have at least one debate per trimester, and you pick an issue. For my class, it was the death penalty, and you're assigned a side, and you research this debate, and you have a real debate, and you discuss the issue. That's the most that I've been involved in for my high school, and then also coming up again for the senior English class, we have another debate that is coming up, but I don't know the topic of that one yet, but coming up.
I really like how you mentioned how most of us are really struggling with time management, with being busy with extracurriculars, work, and overall just the struggle of going through that high school like classes and things like that. But I definitely think that it depends on the students or how involved they want to be in. I know that I am very involved in the high school, and I do a lot of things that I really am grateful for and have taught me so many skills. For example, we are both in FFA, and we're actually officers on that team, and we were actually on the parliamentary procedure team. So we got to learn how to conduct a meeting, how to speak through different ideas, how to speak on the spot, and how to overall just gather our thoughts. But even in student council, getting those opportunities to listen to our peers and to show our school that we do listen to what they say and we are trying our best to just show our support to the entire school. And even in BPA, which we are both a part of, we also do a lot of things with ethics and professionalism and just basic skills with public speaking. Yeah.
Really good.
So, yeah.
You guys take no time.
I just wanted to ask, there is no debate team at school, though,
I
correct?
don't think Park Rapids offers a debate team.
Just a speech team.
Yes.
And
When was debate last?
I have no
I
idea.
don't know. You're too
In the speech, because I was in speech this past year, there's a discussion category where it's similar to a debate, but instead of having two sides, it's more about like 5 people at a table discussing an issue. But that's about it that I know of.
You must have a lot of rules around that too then, for keeping that discussion, you know,
I'm
civil,
not really,
mild.
yeah, I wasn't in the discussion category,
Okay.
but I know that there's definitely like some rules and they have to be able to bring up, like start speaking, they have to speak in turn, and they're awarded points for that, and that's how it becomes a competition, I think.
But our school really does do a good job in offering different roles or opportunities to take or extracurriculars to take. So there's really is something for everyone. And through that, through the school, we are learning those basic skills that you never thought that would be so important in life that will impact our futures.
Okay, and we got some other questions for other panelists. Let's not wear the girls out.
Thank you for putting this on. It's a wonderful discussion, and I've learned a lot. I have a question, I have no idea who to address it to. On this automatic voter registration, it says when you apply for a driver's license, you get an automatic registration for voting. How does that work?
I'm glad you asked. It's another thing I just found out from our, the presidents of all the locals of the League of Women Voters have a monthly phone call. It happened to be noon today, and we talked about that. And that's going to be one of the letters to the editor that they have a template that we sort of adjust for our local situation. But the main thing that happens is when people go in to renew their driver's license, or some of your peers, when they get their driver's license, you will automatically be registered to vote, which means your name and information goes in, and they compare it to all the databases to make sure, verify the identity, that you're a citizen and everything like that. And then if all of that comes up, they add the name to the voter registration rolls. If they can't verify citizenship or a couple of other categories, and I forget them off the top of my head here, then you wouldn't be added to the rolls. So a 16-year-old and a 17-year-old can pre-register now, but they won't be added to the rolls until their 18th birthday. But it's all done by computers, which means you don't have to go find out where to register.
So when you go to renew or get your first license, are you told that now
Yeah.
you're registered to vote?
Yes, you should be. And before you were asked whether you wanted to, and a lot of people opted out. Unless you opted in, you didn't get on the roll. They didn't go through that procedure.
So I just had mine done today and I wasn't asked.
Oh, well, we'll have to, well, it may be, there's a start date to it.
Sure.
So it may be June 1st or something like that, yeah. So,
Well, that's a good answer to my question, because I wondered if you had to be a citizen to get
Yes.
that license, and you do.
well, you don't have to be a citizen to get the driver's license.
No, but we can register to vote, that's my
But
question.
then register to vote you do, but they check those
That's great.
things so that they make sure. And that's why, in some ways, it's much more accurate to register ahead of time, because all those databases can be checked and compared. Whereas if you have to register in person near or on election day, it's still your right to do that, but you have less time to do all the checking. So this way, it's just easier, quicker, more accurate.
Is that checked even though you register on election day?
It is.
That's all checked anyway, it's just not
Yes.
checked in advance.
Yeah, the process is, how would you say it, more certain, smoother, everything's taken care of, and it doesn't have to be rushed, but there is a way that they can check too on that same day. We don't have too much problem with that. If somebody shows up and they want to vote on that day, they're probably in the right place. You do have to prove you're a resident of that precinct. So you still have to bring something with you that has the address on it or another person to vouch for you. So it's not just go in and sign up. You do have to verify some things.
I sort of feel like this person back here right now, but you, philosophically, I agree with this concept. And coming to common ground, I agree with that conceptually and philosophically. But what's been running through my mind the entire time we've been here, and you sort of spurred that when you talked about going to college next year, and right now it's at a high pitch, let's just say, and people are being impacted in very serious ways. And I would like somebody, whoever wants to address where dissidence fits into the idea of freedom, and that positive change, that's my opinion, can come from that also. There have been many cases of revolutions and, protests and things like that that have actually accomplished good. And then we can start to debate what is good, but I'm just saying, I'm interested to hear if common ground sounds to me like lukewarm, but I believe in it. But I want to know, where does dissidence fit into this? And particularly, I'm thinking about you, and you're going off to college amidst all this turmoil. I mean, it's pretty scary.
I don't know what dissonance means, so I don't know how to answer this question.
Take that question as to what this common ground is. Go for it, Steve.
When to have protest is something that we have a right to do. And we can, even block a street or make things kind of inconvenient for somebody.
Take over classrooms.
Well, yeah, you have that too, but then you should pay the price. If you're going to break the law, then you have every right to break the law, and you have every right to protest it, and then you choose to take whatever the cost is. Now, usually on protests, they let them go. But my point I'm trying to get at is sometimes it takes more than talk, and people have a right to protest. But the line for me is drawn at violence and also the destruction of property. Then you should be held accountable, which is fine.
Thank you.
That's for me.
I want to respond, but I shouldn't, because it's sort of like creating an argument. But I think that not all laws are just, and that's historically true. So, there is a real place for dissidence, and often it's ugly and bad, but I think good comes from it, and that's probably too much already, but anyway.
I'll say that it's good to explore every available channel. It seems like during the colonial times that the colonists really tried to get King George to understand their plight and to address, we really want to be governed in a right way that's humane. And he refused, and so they said, well, then we're going to be our own country. And George said, no, you're not. And so then there was the American Revolutionary War, because all the channels had been exhausted. In the Civil War times, pre-Civil War times, there was a disagreement that just kept heightening, and everyone was following the proper channels. And you go to the Supreme Court, and they make a terrible, terrible decision. And you explore every channel you can, and then all of a sudden it breaks up into war, and people die. I think what we're being told is that moment is right now, when we haven't exhausted all of our channels yet. So I think there is a place for revolution and rebellion and dissidence and protest, but there are just so many channels, and for whatever reason, we're being convinced that we have to jump right to the revolution and the bloodshed, rather than all the other channels. And sometimes it feels like the reason we have to do that is we're not being listened to, and that's part of what we're doing here, right? If you feel like you're being listened to, and your point is actually being fairly put out there, then you're not going to feel the need to go and beat somebody up.
Yeah, I think one of the headlines that we saw today was that, I think it was University of Minnesota, that they had a dialogue between the people that wanted to protest and the university administration, and they worked out the rules on how they're gonna do this. And others, they didn't, they tried to talk, it didn't work. As a student of history, my thing is, every protest, every war had a long lead up and a long time it took to do this and a long time to heal from it. So no matter which way you do it, change comes in fits and starts, and it's a long process. Nothing helps instantly.
I really
And
appreciate.
What do you think you would, how would you approach, you're gonna be the person in this room, I think, that's gonna be experiencing, maybe it's not gonna happen in your lifetime too, I don't know. How do you think that you would approach a protest on a campus with two distinct sides? Do you think you would, and you don't have to answer that question, it's kind of personal, I get that, but how do you think you would deal with that? And what do you, when you said, it's nerve-wracking a little bit to be a senior because you're going off to college, what do you think that's going to be like for you?
I guess, I don't know, it depends if I believe in what they're protesting. Are you saying if I was like the dean, or like if I was the?
Just a student.
Oh, okay, I was like, what?
What?
Yeah.
I guess I really don't know. I mean, that's a really tough situation to be in, having protests on your campus. I really hope I don't run into that issue.
But even if you're neutral, you can't get to your class.
Yeah, maybe Ursuline is.
Well, I just wanted to say that I appreciate all these questions. It definitely is very open-minded and helps me just kind of understand a little bit more. And I'm actually really interested in going to law school, so this is really helping me. Just seeing everyone's perspective and knowing that we all have our different perspectives in the way that we see things. And I don't know, if I was that student to get in that role or in that situation, I would say that I have the right and privilege to stand what I believe in, and I guess, I don't know, I like that I know that I have that privilege. Even though I don't need to use it, I know that I can. And I know that I can speak freely, and knowing that my voice will be heard either way, regardless. And yeah, that's all I'm gonna say on that.
Okay, and we've got one question over here, and then we'll probably take one more.
I would like Kent to answer your question.
What?
I would like Kent to answer your question.
Put you on the hot seat.
What would you do?
Oh, okay, sorry. I can't hear, so normally I just talk all the time, but I'm trying to hear what you guys say, so. Sorry.
From my experience in being in the Marine Corps, I've come away with the attitude that we must do everything possible in our power to avoid a fight. And the words that we choose are so important in that regard. When I hear people talking about the other party being the enemy, do they really understand what happens between enemies? Would it make more sense for us to just say they're our opponent? In my mind, that is a wiser choice of words. So I'm hoping through the work that we do here with League of Women Voters and Braver Angels to avoid that fight at all costs, because I agree with what was said earlier that we haven't exhausted all of our options. And I think that fighting is, and revolution is the easier path. Finding common ground is by far the hardest.
Okay, Is there anybody else that has a question further back?
I just want to say that I think it's interesting and ironic that we're at a meeting like this, sponsored by the League of Women Voters. Willis and I watched a movie recently about the history of the suffrage movement. And I know if I had lived in that time, I would have been part of that movement. And I know some of what it would have cost me, probably even being wrongfully imprisoned, as so many of them were. I probably would have joined the women in the prison who decided not to eat as part of their protest until they would be listened to. And they were wrongfully imprisoned. They didn't break any laws, but they were told they were crazy. They were told, many things. And so I'm torn between that urge to find common ground. And yet, when people are mistreated for seeking rights that we now embrace as rights that the Constitution gave us, but 100 years or more after the Constitution gave us those rights, we didn't have them. That's the quandary I'm in.
That was kind of what I was getting
Yeah.
at.
And that is, Florence, do you remember the date that Susan B. Anthony and the other suffragists had that meeting in New York and sort of started the movement? 1830, 40 something, wasn't it?
Took a long time.
And it was 1900s, 1910. So they had tried many, 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 many things. And it just takes a very long time. And things do change though. It just, sometimes we run out of patience and sometimes your opponents run out of patience. And
Think of the Equal Rights Amendment.
right.
That's
Right, Equal Rights Amendment. The first Equal Rights Amendment was actually worded about 100 years ago. And we're still trying to work it through the legislative process. But we don't give up. That's the main thing.
Just one more comment is, we're not at that point yet. I think we're talking about the political partisan divide. But I think the students protesting on the campus are not dealing with that divide. They are dealing with,
Yeah.
it's
That's another issue
it's
already.
a totally different issue.
Yeah.
And we're at a really terrible point.
Yeah, and the thing that we also have to remember is if you take all the college students in the United States and you take a look at the map of where these universities are that they're protesting, it's probably 20–30% of them. It's not as big a movement as we all lived through during the Vietnam era. So it hasn't gotten to that level yet. It might if this thing keeps going. We're not gonna solve this tonight,
I
Val.
just see it.
Please,
I just see their protest.
Please use the microphone so the rest of us can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just had to say that I think they're protesting is for a positive reason, and definitely it's muddy and negative factions get in there.
That's the muddy and negative as far.
Mhm.
It's never clean.
Yeah, it is. Okay, do we have a question on a slightly different topic? All right, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna sort of wrap up the program. We've got the room for a little bit longer, so stay and talk to each other, to our guests. This is what we're trying to promote, is discussion. And this was really great, so I thank you all for coming. If you would like any more information about the League of Women Voters here in Park Rapids, what we do for voter education, how our league functions, we're going to have our annual meeting at the end of May. And so just contact one of our league members and, let's see, why don't you raise, if you're a league member right now, raise your hand. So there's quite a few of us here, so talk to us, put a note on the sign-up sheet, and I will get you that information if you want to come. We're basically going to talk about how the league is structured and what our goals and what we do. Also, watch for announcements about candidate forums that will be coming hopefully the last week in September. So not just after early voting starts, so that you'll be able to hear from your local candidates. And you can all help us. The League of Women Voters in the United States has a website called Vote 411 that has all the candidates who will file, their names listed, has 6 or 7 questions about the office they're seeking that the candidates are supposed to fill out. And it's a sort of a one-stop website where you can look up your local races from school board to county commissioner, whatever. But we need the candidates to fill out those questions themselves. We can't answer for them. So if you know any candidates or can write to them or something, tell them to answer that email and sign up and answer their questions on Vote 411. And Florence, what?
There's still openings for people to sign in here. If you've not had a chance to do it,
Yeah.
we would appreciate having information from you.
Yeah, and I use those emails only to send out notifications of programs like this and the candidate forums. So thank you again for coming, and I'll open it for informal discussions.